Welcome to this week's installment of the show where we decide, does it hold up? Is it still funny? Is it worth watching? And this week we're jumping in to a, I think, universally acclaimed classic, well-regarded movie, but it's going to be interesting to have the conversation of does it hold up, and that is Trading Places. Chris, I know this is one of your favorite movies from that era.
Absolutely. So there are some movies that everybody has that if it's on TV, you watch it. This is one of those for me. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times Anne has been like, you're watching this movie again? Because I love this movie. It's on TV hilarious. It is a hilarious movie.
Yeah, so general premise, if you haven't seen it, Eddie Murphy's character, poor, Dan Aykroyd, rich, swap. And this is a very simple comedic premise that has been repeated in different formats. Not so much the poor to rich thing. I want to get to that in a sec. But you see this with Arrested Development.
If I wanted something your thumb touched, I'd eat the inside of your ear.
Schitt's Creek, which was really popular the last couple of years.
Oh, I'd kill for a good coma right now.
And Dan Aykroyd's character, they set up perfectly. They kind of make him an asshole.
You are making a career decision here. Now, you'd better think about it.
Strip, you little shit, before I tell you a new asshole.
He's not likable. It's really easy to be unsympathetic to the rich person going to become poor and to become, like, they have nothing.
I mean, I think this is really like a commentary on, like, the hoi polloi, like, lifestyle.
Pork bellies. I knew it.
You see it with Dan Aykroyd's character. And then you also kind of see it with Eddie Murphy, too. Because, like, he comes into this money, right? And what's the first thing he decides to do? He's going to have a party because he wants to show off to the guys in jail. Look, I got money. Look, I wasn't lying to you. I'm rich. Then something clicks in his head during that party where he's like, you know what? Actually, maybe I shouldn't be just dropping money like crazy.
Yeah, he kind of doesn't like that this place is being trashed and everything.
Yeah. An interesting note about the movie before we really dive into like what held up and what didn't hold up is that this was actually written as a Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder vehicle.
Harry, for God's sake, you're going to get us in trouble.
But Richard Pryor wasn't able to do the movie, so it was going to be Gene Wilder and Eddie Murphy. And then Eddie Murphy kind of convinced him he wanted Dan Aykroyd instead, and so then Pryor and Wilder were both off of the movie. They have some real quality movies from the 70s, but now when you get into the 80s, you kind of see a little bit of a different dynamic there, and Eddie Murphy was really taking that Richard Pryor role, and he really ran with it, and this was really like his first movie. This was his first movie where he exploded, and this set the table for so many other things coming forward. The premise is that these two guys, Randolph and Mortimer, are trying to show that it's nurture over nature.
Given the right surroundings and encouragement, I'll bet that man could run our company as well as your young Winthorpe.
They're having this argument over $1, one crisp dollar, and that's where Eddie Murphy's character comes in, and same thing with Dan Aykroyd. I think for the most part there are some jokes that are in there that are very much not appropriate.
Of course there's something wrong with him. He's a Do
you remember me? It's Lionel Joseph.
That will not hold up, and that a lot of people won't get. But I think there's a lot there that folks are just going to dive into and be like, I get it.
Yeah,
I understand.
I think with you can pull any comedy from the 80s and you're going to find one-off jokes that aren't going to hold up or just are dated. But the premise to the movie, I think, will live on. This is one of those things that will just live on forever. It's just such a simple concept to understand. The one part that I don't know if this was being made today or if it even holds up as well is Eddie Murphy. So it's really easy to make fun of Dan Aykroyd and the wealthy person struggling and to make fun of that hoity-toity high society. And they do a great job satirizing that. But Eddie Murphy's character becoming wealthy, there is some kind of, it's not offensive, but the racial dynamic, I think if this was made in 2020 would be different.
So like what are you talking about, like at the very beginning where he's acting as the homeless vet and he's on the
all of that.
the little thing, and then the cops come up to him and they lift him up and his legs come out from underneath him.
I mean that scene right there, and then it's the idea of him being a homeless black man who then is part of like basically this almost like an elaborate joke of the hoity-toity guys to become wealthy, and he's like an animal to them basically in the beginning. I don't know if they would just recast it or if they would do it differently, but I think that part, if you were watching this for the first time, I wonder how many people would be like a little cringy about that.
Thank you, I don't know what to do.
Well, I mean, if you believe in the Illuminati and the New World Order, then you probably, I mean, you're probably on board. I mean, you know, I got recruited to be in the Illuminati, and so I mean, I get it. I understand what that's all about, and so the fact that you're saying like that there's these people playing with the lives of like the rich and the poor and just kind of doing like, that's exactly what's going on here. It's a New World Order. It's like I'm gonna like put Joe Biden as the president, or I'm gonna put Trump as the president, and now I'm gonna like do with the little puppet strings, and that's all that like
that is really
about.
What's going on, and it's that whole thing is comical and really easy to get away with.
So a couple of things that are a problem throughout this movie is that number one, you've got the whole thing going on with Eddie Murphy, and is that is that character problematic, right? Then you also have the whole thing that goes on with Jamie Lee Curtis and Jamie Lee Curtis's character, right? They have her be this prostitute.
Food and rent are not the only things around here that cost money. You sleep on the couch.
And if you actually think about the movie and the course of the movie, and you ask yourself, does she need to be a prostitute in this? The answer is no. Like, she doesn't have to be a prostitute for the jokes to be there. Like, one of the things is this is an 80s movie, and any 80s movie with Jamie Lee Curtis, I'm pretty sure it's written in the Constitution that says that Jamie Lee Curtis has to be topless. And sure enough, there she is in this movie, topless. But like the whole prostitute thing, like prostitute with like a heart of gold, you know, that her walls get torn down when she's helping out Dan Aykroyd's character.
Yeah.
Like that's not necessary. Like we don't have to be doing something like that.
No, that's true.
And then like one thing that definitely would not be in this movie if they remade it today is in the end when they're on the train. And so they're trying to play the prank on the guy that's bringing the crop report. And Dan Aykroyd's character walks in blackface.
I certainly hope there's enough space on the train for me.
There is 0% chance that happens today. I mean, like, everybody's playing a character in there where, like, the butler's playing this Irish priest. And Jamie Lee Curtis is playing, she's supposed to be Austrian and like is playing Swedish because she doesn't know the Austrian accent, and so she says it in the Swedish accent, which is really weird because apparently Jamie Lee Curtis just can't do an Austrian accent. Like that's a real thing. Like she couldn't do it, so she played it Swedish.
Let me see now. You would be from Austria, am I right?
No, I am Inga from Sweden.
Sweden? But you're wearing lederhosen.
Yeah, for sure, from Sweden.
And then there's Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy both playing exchange students. And Dan Aykroyd in blackface. And there's no chance that happens today.
No.
And it's not even something that's like really central to the story arc. So like you remove that and he's playing any other character and it's fine. And it gets
that was just acceptable comedically then to a degree. Like it was so absurd that you could get away with it. But again, like if you're doing this movie now, do you even have the racial black-white thing? But I think the central premise to the movie we see now with, like I said at the outset, the success of shows like Arrested Development or Schitt's Creek. I don't know if this movie directly influenced a plot like that, but this is a plot line that will live on forever. It's like the ancillary stuff to it, and a lot of the jokes and a lot of the minor things. Like you could have made Jamie Lee Curtis not a prostitute. You could have made Eddie Murphy's character less stupid, and maybe you don't even make him homeless in the beginning. Like
you could have had the guy not get raped by a gorilla.
easily, yes. There were just like little things you probably could have done differently if you were remaking it now or in the future. And the big picture storyline, the big picture comedy is still there. It's still hilarious.
Yeah.
If you get over that.
And it's educational, because this movie taught me everything I know about the stock market. That probably explains why I've lost thousands of dollars in the stock market. But now I know about commodities like frozen concentrated orange juice, and that are traded not only in Chicago but also in New York. And which brings me to another point, which is this movie's set in Philadelphia, but it doesn't have to be set in Philadelphia.
It can be set anywhere. Really.
There's no point
New York,
necessarily
Chicago.
of like why it was set in Philadelphia.
No.
It wasn't set in Chicago because they couldn't get the rights to actually film in the pits here.
Oh, that's interesting.
So they filmed it in the pits in New York. And I know a lot of people that obviously take the train from Philadelphia, that they live in Philadelphia and commute to New York City, and that makes sense. But like, there's nothing about this movie that like was Philly.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have to be Philly. It could have been.
That's interesting.
Anything. You could have filled in the blank.
All these movies are set in New York and have no reason to ever be really set in New York other than it's New York and this aura of New York and like this romanticism of New York. If you've been to New York, I mean, it's like the romanticism.
They throw
not
their
there.
garbage on the
There's
street.
garbage in the street. There's rats everywhere. It's
Their
disgusting.
pizza is floppy.
Yes, friends, the new Turbo Ginsu. Woohoo! It dices.
When you're drunk at 3 a.m. and you want to get some pizza, fine, get some New York pizza, and that'll soak up all that alcohol.
Concrete Jungle, where dreams have made of my ass.
Filthy! Disgusting!
The New York they put in movies is sometimes ridiculous, but every single romantic comedy has to be set in New York for no reason. And there's nothing specific New York to the plot more often than not. But they just make it set in New York with unrealistic apartments, unrealistic expectations. But setting a movie outside of New York for no reason is kind of weird because, like, if you see a movie set in Philadelphia, like Rocky, like there's a lot of Philadelphia central things. If you see a movie set in Chicago, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, there's a lot of Chicago-centric things. There's nothing that made that movie have to be set in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that if they're doing it based on the trading pit in New York, that they would base it in New York, or like a suburb of New York or something like that, where it's there. It's physically right there. But then again, I guess if they don't do that, then there's not the train scene where fucking Jim Belushi shows up.
Look what happened to me, huh?
Fuck that guy.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
But like, he shows up because he always just shows up someplace. Like, if there's a camera, he's showing up.
Lesser Belushi, yeah.
And, you know, I guess you don't get the getting raped by a gorilla joke.
That black one must be the female.
I mean, maybe it's all building up to the train scene. And that's like the whole...
That's possible, yeah.
Purpose of the setting, but...
But I do want to say, go back to that jail scene. Because here's Eddie Murphy. He's in jail after he's being arrested for panhandling. You probably don't get the same scene going on today with everything that's been going on with the protests and police brutality. So you probably don't get the same type of atmosphere where he's running from the police and the police are chasing him in that whole first scene.
Yeah.
And then he gets arrested and put in jail. But the whole jail scene where he's with these other guys who are in jail for what reason we don't know. And he's talking about, I'm rich, I got a limo, I got all this stuff. And there's the famous line,
"It ain't cool being no jive turkey so close to Thanksgiving."
Which I often say.
You know, there are a lot of one-liners here that is pretty typical of an Eddie Murphy movie. That kind of sets the premise to Eddie Murphy showing off, as I said earlier, where he's showing off his money now. And now he's rich. And so he says, go outside, go see my limo. Check it out. And I'm going to have you come over. And then all of a sudden they're putting out cigarettes on this fancy rug that now is his. And he's being like, stop. You know, get out. You're not my friends. You thought you were my friends, but you're not my friends.
That's the real like shift in him,
in the whole movie too. And then like you see the shift also with Dan Aykroyd's character where he goes completely off the deep end and dresses as Santa Claus and puts a whole side of smoked salmon into his beard, which then when he's on the bus is eating the side of smoked salmon out of his beard, which is a great idea. If I could grow my beard long enough to hold a side of smoked salmon, I would not do that. That's not a great idea. But that brings us to a very valid point. This is a Christmas movie. This is a movie that if it's on, I watch it. And I think it's a very well put together, funny comedy. It has problems, to be sure. But even if you kind of put those problems aside and like take them out, you still have this movie that is a great movie. Yeah. It has all the makings of what is a great movie.
And that's most people don't like remakes of movies that they like. And I'm guessing since you really like this movie, you wouldn't necessarily want to see it remade.
Oh, hell no. I don't want this touched. Like, there are some things that, you know, you see a lot of these things, like I'm seeing particularly a lot of things from my childhood being remade or rebooted, and I hate it because it takes something that was like so important to me and reboots it, and like when they inevitably do a bad job, and they always do a bad job, it makes me angry.
Yeah.
And so I would not want this touched at all.
And I'm not saying I want it touched either. I think maybe they could get away with it like 50 years from now, but I think it's a movie that you realistically could easily try to redo again. It wouldn't be as good as the original. People who saw the original wouldn't like it as much, but the premise is so easy to just recreate. Yeah. And you could change things about it. So when we talk about a lot of the movies we talk about on the show, there are problematic, I hate even using that word, but things in the movie or a comedy that's outdated or cultural references that hold the movie back. And I think this movie is so timeless in its plot that you can just tweak around the edges and you could remake it tomorrow. People wouldn't like it because they like the original.
Yeah.
But the comedy would still be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we've answered our own question of does this hold up? And
yes, it does.
I think 100% it does.
Absolutely.